silent.
The air hung heavy, thick with unspoken words. A fragile peace, more suffocating than any argument. He sat across from me, his gaze fixed on some invisible point beyond the window. His silence was a weapon, honed to perfection over years of wielding it against me. Each tick of the clock hammered in the nails of my confinement, sealing me within the prison of his making. My voice, once a vibrant melody, now felt like a distant whisper, lost in the cavernous space between us.
Fear, a venomous serpent, coiled itself around my throat, squeezing the breath from my lungs. To speak was to invite a storm, a torrent of his fury that I was too weary to weather.
Dinner lay cold and untouched on the table, a silent testament to the icy chasm that separated us. The clinking of his fork against the plate was the only sound that dared to break the oppressive silence. Each bite he took felt like a victory, a reminder of his dominion over my emotions, my very being.
My reflection in the darkened window pane stared back at me, a stranger with haunted eyes. Was this the woman I had become? Subdued, diminished, a mere shadow of the vibrant spirit I once possessed.
His control, insidious and all-encompassing, had woven its way into the fabric of my being. The weight of his expectations pressed down on me, suffocating any flicker of individuality.
My purpose, he had decreed, was to orbit around him, existing solely to reflect his own brilliance. How had I allowed myself to become so entangled in his web of manipulation? Was I so weak, so desperate for affection, that I willingly surrendered my very essence? The self-recrimination, sharp and unforgiving, sliced through the remnants of my self-worth.
His voice, laced with a subtle venom that only I could detect, echoed in my ears.
You're nothing without me, he would sneer, his words a poisoned dart aimed at my heart.
And for so long I had believed him. Memories like faded photographs flickered through my mind. Images of a time before the darkness descended. We had been so happy then. I remembered the infectious laughter and carefree joy.
His touch, once warm, now sent shivers of apprehension. The man I loved seemed lost, replaced by a stranger.
We had danced under the moonlight, swaying in harmony. His promises had held the allure of forever.
I will love you always, he had vowed.
Those memories now felt like shards of glass. The contrast between past and present was stark.
You deserve better.
Sarah, my oldest and dearest friend, looked at me with eyes filled with concern.
Her gaze, unwavering and true, held a mirror to my own soul, forcing me to confront the truth I had been so desperately trying to outrun. Her words, like seeds of rebellion, took root in the fertile ground of my despair.
For so long, I had silenced the voice within me that whispered of my own worth. I had convinced myself that his happiness was my responsibility, that my needs were insignificant compared to his. He loves you.
Love shouldn't hurt.
Her presence was a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the darkness of my despair. She reminded me of the woman I used to be, the one who laughed freely and embraced life with open arms. With each conversation, each shared moment of laughter and tears, the seed of doubt that she had planted within me began to grow, taking root in the long-dormant soil of my own spirit.
The words tumbled out of my mouth, a torrent of suppressed emotions unleashed. Years of resentment, of silenced desires and unmet needs poured forth.
He sat there, stunned into silence, as the woman he thought he had broken finally found her voice. The fear, once a paralyzing force, now fueled her rage.
I am not your possession. I'm not an extension of you. I'm a woman with thoughts, with dreams, with a heart that beats with its own rhythm.
Each word felt like a physical blow, chipping away at the walls of his control. The air crackled with tension, the silence between them now thick with the unspoken threat of change. He had underestimated her, underestimated the resilience of the human spirit.
The click of the lock echoed in the stillness of the empty apartment, the sound of my liberation. My suitcase, packed with the remnants of my former life, stood by the door, a symbol of my newfound freedom.
There were no tears, No lingering goodbyes, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had finally chosen herself. The world outside seemed brighter, the air alive with possibilities.
Fear, though still present, no longer held me captive. I had stared into the abyss of my own despair and emerged, battered but unbroken, on the other side.
Driving away, she didn't look back. The rearview mirror held no allure. The past was a closed chapter, a lesson learned, a stepping stone on the path to self-discovery.
My heart, though still bearing the scars of his emotional abuse, was finally free to beat to the rhythm of its own drum. The road ahead was uncertain, but I embraced the unknown with a sense of exhilaration I had not felt in years.
The man in the reflection was a stranger, his eyes hollow, haunted by the ghost of his own making. The silence of the empty apartment mocked him, a constant reminder of the love he had squandered, the spirit he had crushed.
He reached for her, his hand passing through the space where she used to stand, his touch met with only emptiness.
The woman he thought he knew, the one he believed he had safely contained within the gilded cage of his affection, was gone. In her place stood a force to be reckoned with, a woman forged in the fires of adversity, her spirit unbreakable.
The sun, setting on the horizon, painted the sky in hues of orange and gold, a symbol of hope and new beginnings. She breathed deeply, the salty air filling her lungs with a sense of liberation.
The journey ahead would not be easy. The scars of the past ran deep, but she was no longer afraid to confront her own reflection. She was a survivor, a warrior, a woman reborn, and she was finally, gloriously free.